This is Right to Life Radio with John Gerardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Gerardi.
Two major pieces of pro-life news throughout the country. One is a piece of very bad news, a terrible regulatory change enacted by the Biden administration to make pill abortion more accessible, and a very good court case out of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which sets up a major challenge to Roe v. Wade in the upcoming years. Here with me to break it all down, the man of the hour of this hour of radio, Jonathan Keller.
That's me, the man of the hour.
Of this hour. All right. So we have been pretty consistent on this show talking about what I thought was the most important, one of the most important life issues at stake in the 2020 election. In some ways, I thought more important than even the Supreme Court, just because of the current makeup of the Supreme Court, who's likely to retire, who's not likely to retire, etc. I figured that this regulatory change, which the Biden administration has just initiated, was going to be the most important life issue at stake. What am I talking about? The Biden administration issued temporary emergency rules, and I'm using big scare quotes around temporary and emergency for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic, rules for loosening up restrictions around pill abortions, so-called medication abortions. I don't like to use the term medication abortion because it's not really medication. Medication fixes something.
Pregnancy is not a disease.
Pregnancy is not a disease that requires fixing. So what's going on here? Pill abortion has certain FDA safeguards around it. And the chief sort of safeguard, or at least the one that liberals are most often fixated upon, the one that pro-choice advocates are most often fixated upon, is the fact that you do have to go into the clinic to get a pill abortion. You have to go into the clinic to get the first of the two drugs that are involved in a pill abortion. And that has been a sore spot for members of the pro-choice left. They think that this is a huge hindrance to women's ability to access abortion. And as we've talked about a lot of times on the show, access is the great buzzword when it comes to abortion. Safe, legal, and accessible. Access. Access is the thing. So if you don't live near an abortion clinic, if you don't have a car, if you have some limitation on your ability to get to an abortion clinic, the requirement for pill abortion that you go into the clinic to have the abortion is a bit onerous. And pill abortion has been embraced by the abortion industry more and more and more. It's in many ways simpler than a surgical abortion. Chiefly, you don't need a surgeon. You don't need an OBGYN. You can just take the pill under supervision from some medical personnel, and that's it. So for a long time, well, certainly the last 4 or 5 years or so, the left has started agitating that a lot of the restrictions surrounding pill abortion be taken away so that pill abortion can be sent in the mail so that you can take a pill abortion without having to go into the clinic. That's the key. That's the big sticking point. Get rid of that requirement that you have to actually drive to a clinic.
And John, this is something I should say just for the state of California as an example. We have been trying in the state, and I say we in the broad sense of our overlords in Sacramento.
Really, you should say they, because it does not actually involve you.
It really does not involve you or me at all.
Yeah,
but
no.
I should say the state of California has been on this aggressive push to do everything they can to, as you pointed out, quote unquote, expand access. And that started several years ago with these pilot programs where they said, well, do we really need to have like actual doctors that are performing these first trimester abortions. I mean,
Right.
Can't we just allow, any old person, a nurse practitioner or a nurse midwife, or can't we let someone like that do that? And
because that's also it's also a difficulty for Planned Parenthood. If you need to have a doctor do the abortion, then you need to pay that doctor's fee. The doctor gets a chunk of the money. You're limited as far as who can actually do it, and it's kind of an additional overhead cost for Planned Parenthood. In fact, there are some clinics where they have so few doctors locally willing to do abortions that they'll fly someone in for the day, and then they'll do surgical abortions only one day a week. So pill abortion is sort of a panacea for Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. It allows them to not have to bring in a doctor, which is often very useful, especially for some of their more remote clinics.
And it's, John, like you said, it's the kind of the cherry on top of these years and years of advocacy, because it feels like they are just working to weaken any sort of safeguards, any sort of safety nets, guardrails, whatever you want to call it, that would protect people from serious complications.
Right. So now that you mentioned complications, it's time for a fun little part of this show where we'll bring in another piece of relevant news. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, as many of you know, the FDA put a halt on distribution of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because 7 women out of the 6 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that have been administered in the United States, 7 women have reported having blood clots. I don't think any of those 7 women died or anything. They just reported having blood clots, right? It's not, it's not death, or as Jonathan texts someone in the middle of the show. It's these 7 women have not died. They just reported having blood clots, which is bad, which is serious. But we're talking 7 people out of 6 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
I don't know, John. That is almost 1 in a million.
Almost 1 in a million. All right. Let's compare pill abortion, where out of 3.7 million women who've had pill abortions, 24 of them have died. And beyond that, we've had something like 4,000 reported adverse incidents. 4,000 reported adverse incidents. Now, it's also important to note that the Obama administration in 2016, their FDA, changed the reporting requirements around pill abortion so that they're only reporting deaths. They're not reporting lesser incidents. So simultaneously, the Biden administration, the Biden FDA, is loosening restrictions on the abortion pill, which has led to 24 deaths, 4,000 adverse medical events, thousands of women hemorrhaging, having to go to hospital, some women passing blood clots the size of a baseball. But we're stopping the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because 7 women out of 6 million have had blood clots.
If people are curious, what exactly are we talking about? If you want to see this dramatized on film, the movie Unplanned has I can't even think, nauseating, heartbreaking, harrowing. I mean, it just incredibly gripping scene in that movie where Abby Johnson's character has a chemical medication pill abortion, and the time that it takes, the excruciating nature of it is just really horrific.
Yeah.
And it just shocks me, John, exactly like you said, at a time where we have all been told for years and years and years that, COVID is the greatest threat to Western civilization, heck, all civilization.
All civilization, yeah.
And you have this vaccine that has a very small incident of complications. There is an abundance of caution for that.
But not for this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so what exactly did the Biden administration do? So let's clarify. Basically, what they did was they issued some emergency temporary regulations surrounding pill abortion, basically getting rid of that in-clinic requirement and allowing abortion pills to be sent to patients through the mail. Now, the claim is that this is being done temporarily for the duration of the coronavirus pandemic.
Where have I heard that phrase before?
Yeah. It's not going to be temporary. It's not going to be for the duration of the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic is the excuse that's being used to get their foot under the door. Get their foot in the door? I think it was
nose under the tent.
I was confusing nose under the tent and foot in the door. So foot in the door to make sure that this regulatory change, which the pro-choice left has been advocating for, they didn't start advocating for abortion pills to be sent in the mail with no in-clinic visit. They didn't start advocating for that when COVID hit. They were advocating for that long before COVID hit.
Yes.
Okay, people like Daniel Grossman from UCSF, from the Bixby Center for Reproductive Health. I might be getting the name wrong. I know it's the Bixby Center. He's been advocating for this for a long time.
Well, right? John, on that note, let me read you the text that I got Tuesday. Somehow a couple of years ago, I think it was maybe during the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation or something, I signed up for the NARAL Pro-Choice America text message feed.
Ah.
So every now and then I get these fundraising appeals or these, during the Trump administration, it was always these, dire warnings of, oh no, did you see that President Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So this is what they texted on Tuesday at 4 p.m. NARAL HQ. Great news! ! The FDA lifted harmful restrictions on medication abortion through the pandemic. Demand they make it permanent. Click here.
Yeah. So immediately they're trying to make it permanent.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like, we realize this is a dangerous step. This is a concerning eventuality. We hope to get back to normal soon.
No. And the excuse of the COVID pandemic is a great excuse to bypass normal regulatory change procedures and get something in place lickety-split. So what does that mean? What does this change mean? Which which Jonathan and I completely 100% believe is going to be a permanent change. This is not going to be a temporary change. And what is provisional now will be made permanent later. It means that this right here is going to be the abortion clinic of the future. This bad boy right here. Here's how most abortions are going to take place. And this will take place in states that permit telemedicine services to be used for abortion provision. All right. You will take a woman will take a pregnancy test. She will test positive. She will pull out her smartphone. By the way, for those on the radio, I was waving my cell phone in front of the cameras because we broadcast the show on YouTube. You can watch this show on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/righttolifeca.
I would say it works better as a visual medium, but then they do have to look at us the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So a girl will take out her phone. A woman will take out her phone. She will then Google abortion. She will be directed to the Planned Parenthood app. Once she gets the app, she will start chatting in real time via a text message based app. She will start chatting with a Planned Parenthood nurse practitioner and get a prescription right over her phone for a medication abortion. And it's over a HIPAA secured server, so you can safely, securely transmit medical data. The pills will then be mailed to her house. She won't ever have to get up. She will never have to leave her house. She doesn't need a car. She doesn't need a bus. In California, probably the whole cost is going to be covered by Medi-Cal or emergency Medi-Cal or whatever.
Well, and John, that's especially if SB 245 or AB 245 passes, that would make all insurance plans cover abortion.
Yeah, I think that's SB.
Yeah, SB 245.
Yeah. So that is the future of abortion that we're talking about. You don't ever have to go into a clinic. You don't have to check to see if the baby is too far along for this process. You don't have to check if there's an ectopic pregnancy. You don't have to check on anything. So that is our fear, is that by passing this regulation, the entire face of abortion, the entire nature of how abortion is provided in this country is going to change forever and for the worse. We'll be back with more on this, including a great report from the Heritage Foundation detailing the dangers and risks and the history of pill abortion in the United States. That's next. John Gerardi for Right to Life of Central California. Be right back. Right to Life Radio. John Gerardi and Jonathan Keller here with you.
That's us.
Being played in by Jerry Jeff Walker and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Actually, this might just be Jerry Jeff Walker. Rest in peace, Jerry Jeff Walker. He passed away this 2020.
Oh.
Just further cementing 2020 is a terrible year. Love that song. Thank you all so much for listening to Right to Life Radio, a production, as always, of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. By the way, check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/right-to-life-ca. That's the word two, T-O, not the number two. And you can watch some of the videos from our educational presentation we had this past Wednesday, Stories of Life, where we highlighted a lot of really cool things that different people are doing throughout the valley to help save lives, whether it's our sidewalk advocacy ministry at Right to Life of Central California, or talking about adoption, talking about Rachel's Vineyard, all kinds of great stuff that we do and other people are doing here in the valley. So check that out. And I think we might try to get the audio from that event loaded up on our podcast feed. You can find the podcast of this show if you want to re-listen or send it to a friend on Apple Podcasts or the Stitcher podcast app.
I saw just a little bit of it, but our friend Marianne Angelello was on when I was watching, and
yes, indeed,
yeah, that's a great thing. I need to go back and watch the whole thing. So.
Marianne was pretty dang cool. All right, I want to get to a really great thing that I want to recommend to all of you. So, Right to Life, I haven't. This is my fault that we haven't been as active on it, because I'm fairly active on my Twitter account, twitter.com/FresnoJohnny @FresnoJohnny. But Right to Life of Central California also has a Twitter account. Twitter.com/RightToLifeCA @RightToLifeCA. Again, that's the word two, not the number two. And there's a great research paper, sort of report written by the Heritage Foundation, by Melanie Israel from the Heritage Foundation, about chemical abortion, about pill abortion, which, as we talked about in the first segment, the Biden administration has basically loosened up all the restrictions around pill abortion, basically allowing pill abortion to be sent through the mail, allowing people to get pill abortion without having to go to an abortion clinic, which is kind of the one of the key things that the left has been trying to get rid of, one of the key regulations around pill abortion that the left's been trying to get rid of. We don't have all of the time to read through this whole piece because we do have this important Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision to get to. But it's retweeted at our Twitter account. I'll share it also on our Facebook page. It is a it is a fascinating and horrible history, how pill abortion came to the United States, how the FDA first approved it. Because basically...
Fun fact, John.
Well... all kinds of fun facts, but go ahead.
I was protesting in front of the FDA the week that was approved.
In 2000.
In 2001, it was right on...
Right before George W. Bush was inaugurated.
Literally, Bill Clinton and his FDA rammed it through in the waning days of that administration. And I remember I did not get arrested because I was a wee young 18-year-old, but some of my older activist friends actually got arrested for praying in front of the FDA.
Oh, wow.
And just...
Well, in the words of The Offspring, you're under 18. You won't be doing any time. Anyway,
that's right.
All right. That had no relevance to anything. One of the things they highlight in this report from Heritage Foundation is that the Clinton administration got started trying to legalize pill abortion, trying to bring it to the United States because it was originally developed in France and legalized for use in France during the 80s. They tried to get it to the United States right away, starting in 1993, 1994, in the early days of the Clinton administration. The Rockefeller Foundation was very intimately involved in this, and the whole regulatory process took a very long time, basically took the whole Clinton administration, and then Clinton had to rush it in the last months of his administration during 2000. Obviously, they didn't know exactly how the 2000 election was going to go, and they managed to get it approved by the FDA just before George W. Bush took office. The one thing about the report and it's fascinating, it also details all of the health and safety concerns with pill abortion, the number of deaths, the lack of reporting around it, the number of adverse medical events. It's really a great read. It's a pretty long read, so be prepared for a 10-minute read. I'll conclude by sort of mentioning. The part of it that I found most disheartening. There was, in the history that Melanie Israel laid out in this report, there was tons of activity during the Clinton administration. And there was a bunch that happened during the Obama administration, ways in which the regulations were loosened, ways in which the regulations were changed, a lot of activity. You know what eras there wasn't any activity? It was January 2001 through January 2009, and then January 2017 through January 2021.
John,
the 12 years.
I'm just trying to think. Who was the president and controlling the administrations of those?
The 12 years in the past 2 decades where we had Republican presidents, for some reason during those 12 years, we never took action to roll back those regulations.
You're saying that abortion policy is often a one-way ratchet.
It's a one-way ratchet, and that's why I'm so upset about this Biden regulatory change, is because when Republican presidents get into office, they don't act on this, even though they're in charge of the FDA, even though they have regulatory authority over the FDA. Listen, what happens with pill abortion could radically reshape the whole face of this country as far as how abortion is provided, okay? If abortion pills can be sent in the mail, then anyone can have an abortion no matter how far away you live from an abortion clinic. It makes the clinic obsolete. It changes how pro-life clinics do their work. It's so bad, and Republican presidents seemingly just drop the ball. When we return, we'll talk about a great decision from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in Ohio. You're not going to want to miss it. This is Right to Life Radio on Power Talk 96.7. Kenny Rogers, everybody. Now, this is a different version of it, but this song was made famous in the movie The Big Lebowski. I guess it was famous before The Big Lebowski. This was when Kenny Rogers was probably doing a lot of drugs. So,
just judging from the width that his eyes are open,
maybe he's actively doing drugs during this YouTube video. Is that what you're saying?
Crazier things could have been alleged.
All right. Well, Right to Life Radio, a child-friendly show, except when we accidentally forget to talk about psychedelic.
Just say no, kids.
Just say no. We accidentally forget sometimes and talk about psychedelic music from the 60s. All right. The Big Lebowski, by the way. Great movie. Not a kid-friendly movie, but a great movie. All right. Let's talk about good news, Jonathan.
Yes.
Now, one of the enduring pro-life legacy from the Trump administration, I think, is the Supreme Court that he bequeathed us, or it darn well better be, otherwise going to be really super ticked. Anyway, but
I will say on some other notes, thing that my organization particularly cares about, the religious liberty angle. The fact that we did see a break with Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Barrett, both broke with him over COVID restrictions, which was at least a positive sign to me, because I don't know, John, if you hear this. I keep hearing the court referred to as this 3-3-3 court, where you have 3 conservatives,
right?
Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch, and then you have 3 swing votes. And Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Roberts. And then you have 3 liberals.
But then it's also, well, Gorsuch had, Bostock, which was his big swing moment.
Yep.
So I don't know. Anyway, I think when we try too hard to categorize, let's just note the reality. There are 6 Republican appointees. There are 3 Democrat appointees on the court.
And
make of that what you will.
And today we can count our blessings. Yeah. Because
now, people have asked me, with all these new Supreme Court appointments from President Trump, how do we overturn Roe v. Wade? What is the process going to look like for overturning Roe v. Wade? When do we get to the point where the Supreme Court can overturn Roe? And what needs to happen is a case needs to get to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court needs to actually hear a case. How do they hear a case? Well, the Supreme Court gets thousands of petitions per year to hear different cases from all of the federal circuit courts. And the federal circuit courts, these are courts of appeal, appellate courts. And they hear all of the appeals from all of the federal cases throughout the country. So you have the First Circuit Court of Appeals that hears all of the appeals from all the federal cases out of Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, Puerto Rico, and most of the states of New England. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals hears all the appeals from all the federal cases out of New York, I think Connecticut, and a couple of other places. The Third Circuit, the Fourth Circuit, the Fifth Circuit, each of them hear appeals from a number of different states. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals heard a case out of Ohio. This was a challenge to the constitutionality of an Ohio law. Ohio recently has passed some great pro-life laws. Now that they don't have, sort of pro-life people like John Kasich as governor, Ohio passed a law banning abortions chosen for various kinds of discriminatory reasons. So Ohio passed a law outlawing abortions that are chosen on account of the child's sex. I had sexual relations with a man of this race, and I don't want to have a baby who is half of that race, which would be a really sick and twisted thing and hugely hypocritical, might I add. It outlaws abortions chosen for reasons of race, for reasons of the child's sex. I'm aborting this child because she is a girl and I want a boy, or vice versa. And it outlaws abortions chosen for reason of the child's disability. This is sort of the chief part that has received the most focus and attention, because basically what this would do is outlaw aborting a child purely because he or she has Down syndrome or some other disability. But chiefly Down syndrome is the thing at issue. So the Ohio legislature passed this law, and immediately various abortion activists challenged the law. The law was challenged, and the case was argued before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is, again, one of those federal circuit courts. So the whole structure of the federal court system is cases are initially heard in the federal district courts. These are the lower courts. And if you have disputes of fact, they'll have a trial there. If you have disputes of law, then the judge will write out a legal opinion. And then those cases get appealed up to the circuit courts. So district court at the bottom, the federal circuit courts in the middle, and the U.S. Supreme Court at the top. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals hears all of the appeals from a number of states in the Midwest and the South. Actually, Jonathan, could you pull up a map of the Fifth Circuit while I'm talking here, just so I know? The Fifth Circuit, I know, because my brother was actually a clerk for two different, a federal district court judge in Michigan and then a federal circuit court judge in Tennessee. So it hears appeals from Michigan, Ohio, Tennessee, and a couple of other states. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the Ohio law banning abortions chosen, again, because of the child's disability, race, sex, whatever, that law was constitutional. Now, this is really important. Basically, they said this Ohio law can stand. So now Ohio has basically successfully banned abortions chosen for, actually, I think I totally got this wrong.
It's not the Fifth Circuit,
It's not the Fifth Circuit. I think it's the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Did I say the Fifth Circuit the whole time? Okay.
We're going to look here. I think it might, or maybe it's the Sixth Circuit?
Yeah, I think it's the Sixth Circuit. I think I've been saying the Fifth Circuit the whole show, and it's actually the Sixth Circuit.
Well,
I apologize, folks. It's live radio. Sometimes you make mistakes. I apologize. Okay, so the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals heard this appeal out of Ohio.
There we go.
There you go.
Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee.
All right, there you go. That makes more sense. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that this Ohio law could stand. So Ohio has successfully banned abortions of children with Down syndrome, which, bravo for Ohio.
Which, just as a side note, John, I have to point out for people saying, well, yeah, but we're in California. I mean, that seems
what does that matter to us?
That seems like common sense. This is a good sign, because surely California would do the same thing if they were just given the chance. Well,
California would not do the same.
In 2014, Senator Shannon Grove introduced a bill that was almost the exact same, banning abortion, not even on Down syndrome cases, but just on sex selection.
Yeah, just sex-selective abortions. And it didn't even...
Not a single Democrat vote.
Not a single Democrat vote. Anyway. So that law, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that decision. Upheld I'm still saying the Fifth Circuit. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that ruling. And so good for the Sixth Circuit. But here's maybe the more important thing. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that this kind of law was constitutional. But other circuit courts have struck down those exact same kind of laws on the grounds that they are unconstitutional. Specifically, I believe the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, which struck down an Indiana law that was basically the exact same thing. Indiana tried to ban abortions chosen for the purposes of sex selection, or discrimination against someone on the basis of disability. And the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals struck that down as unconstitutional. So what we have here is one region of the country thinks that those kinds of laws are constitutional and that states can pass such laws, and another region of the country thinks that those kinds of laws are unconstitutional. We have what's called a circuit split. Okay, one circuit thinks one thing, another circuit thinks another thing. So how does such a case get resolved?
Only there was some court that was higher than the circuit court.
Maybe a court that was supreme over all the others. So that's usually the Supreme Court. Basically, they'll take a case if 4 of the justices on the court decide, yes, we should take it. But the guidelines that they sort of follow indicate that if there is a split among the federal circuit courts, if one or more federal circuits view some article of the law one way, and one or more circuit courts view some article of the law another way, then the Supreme Court is more likely to take that case in order to resolve the dispute. So that's the exciting part about this, because this is a way that our Supreme Court can start to chip away at the edifice of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Which, not to be a huge bummer, but let me remind you all of what the existing controlling abortion law in this country is. The existing controlling abortion law in this country is that before fetal viability, states have no ability to regulate abortion whatsoever. They have no ability to ban abortion before fetal viability. And fetal viability being roughly sometime around 22, 23, 24 weeks after conception. So this is, one could say, a real deviation from that norm that we've been operating under ever since Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and really for longer than that, since Roe v. Wade. And I am very excited. I am very excited to see that we now have this circuit split, and that the Supreme Court is really ultimately going to need to decide this. There's only so much that John Roberts can kick the can. As much as he would love to kick the can and not issue any controversial decisions on anything ever again, and by controversial we mean conservative.
Can't we just get along,
Can
guys?
we all just get along? Please don't pack the Supreme Court. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But I think it makes sense. I mean, the notion that we are okay with abortion chosen for radically racist reasons, okay with abortions chosen for sexist reasons, okay with abortion chosen for eugenic or ableist reasons. I mean, these are all categories of law where in various other parts of our life, we're not allowed to discriminate. When I'm hiring someone, I cannot discriminate against that person in the vast majority of contexts on the basis of sex, in almost any context on the basis of race. I cannot discriminate against that person in many ways on the basis of disability, unless it's like a bona fide job requirement or something that's being implicated here. So there are all kinds of legal protections for these categories of persons. And yet what the pro-choice side was having to argue before the Sixth Circuit, not the Fifth, the Sixth.
You got it right. You're right this time.
I'm just... I said fifth like 20 times.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. Not good at this radio thing. Anyway, the pro-choice side was trying to argue this in front of the Sixth Circuit and say, oh, no, it's fine to choose abortion for all of these, horrific discriminatory reasons. It's just not a great look. And so I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that the Supreme Court will take this case, and I'm very hopeful about the outcome. I could definitely see John Roberts folding or going the wrong way, And we'll talk about why I could see that. The Democrat threats to pack the Supreme Court have now got a little more meat on the bone. They've actually introduced legislation to do it. We'll talk about that next, right here on Right to Life Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, Conway Twitty.
I was going to say, Conway Twitty.
Gosh, that hair he's got, that thing looks like a helmet. There's no way you could shoot an arrow into that thing and it would break the arrow. Right to Life Radio. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you to Conway Twitty for providing the musical intro.
Eclectic music this week for the bumps.
Yeah, kind of wacky. Kind of wacky. Sort of a country theme. Yeah, Jerry Jeff Walker and then the psychedelic interlude with Kenny Rogers there. All right. We need to talk about court packing, Jonathan. And
no, John, I was assured that this was something that is complete impossibility. Mm-hmm. It will never happen. It's just pie in the sky. It's fear-mongering from conservatives.
Yeah.
To try to get them to shut down the reasonable and moderate Joe Biden and to scare people into thinking that he is somehow
kind of a
norm breaker.
Yeah. Well, those kinds of arguments worked better before Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts and Representative Jerry Nadler from New York introduced legislation to expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court, from 9 to 13, to add 4 seats. Why 4? A very odd, very specific number chosen. Why would you add 4 new justices? Maybe because right now the Democrat appointees have 3 fewer seats on the court right now. So if you add 4, then it goes from a 3-6 Democrat appointee minority to a 7-6 Democrat appointee majority. So very conveniently, we've picked the number 4. Although, if this is done for anything other than pure partisanship, why stop at 4? Why not have 20 Supreme Court justices? Or 47?
Why not 435?
Why not 10,001? There doesn't seem to be really any limiting principle other than Democrats want to have a majority of the appointees.
Yep.
So I want to, just as an argumentative point, well, maybe not as an argumentative point. Let me just make it clear. Why are they doing this? Let's not kid ourselves, folks. There is one reason, and one reason alone, why Democrats are doing this. Is it because they're angry that Merrick Garland never got a vote when Barack Obama nominated him for the Supreme Court in 2016? No. Is it because they're angry that Neil Gorsuch got Merrick Garland's seat? No. Is it because they're angry that Republicans stuck by their man and got Brett Kavanaugh confirmed in spite of the allegations of sexual abuse or sexual assault when he was a teenager, even though his accuser couldn't actually remember a whole bunch of critical details and never told anyone about it for 40 years? No. And even though her lawyer admitted that part of her motivation was because she didn't want to see Roe v. Wade overturned? No. Is it because they're mad that Republicans filled Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat with an arch conservative like Amy Coney Barrett? No. The reason they want to pack the court is very simple. It's all about Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade hangs over this entire debate. It's not the one thing that it's not just a thing that matters. It's the only thing that matters.
It's the forceps of Damocles, as it were.
Okay, I'm not getting that reference.
The sword of Damocles.
The sword of Damocles. Yeah.
So the forceps. The abortion forceps.
Jeez. Okay. Well, that's pretty macabre, Jonathan.
I'm just saying.
Right. But it's true. Roe v. Wade hangs over this whole thing, and the left is terrified that a 6-3 Republican majority on the court is going to overturn Roe. And so I think their objective is twofold. One, to test the waters to see, can we actually get this passed? Can we actually convince Joe Manchin to abolish the filibuster and vote to pack the Supreme Court? Can we actually convince him to do that? And two, actually what I should have said there was, and B, Like, I love it when people do start with number 1 and then conclude with letter B. And B, the other thing they're trying to do, I think, is intimidate the existing members of the court.
Hey, nice little court you got there.
Be a shame if someone tried to pack it.
Yeah.
And basically, they're trying to intimidate John Roberts. And I think John Roberts is very willing to be intimidated. They're basically threatening him by saying if this court operates in a radical and aggressively conservative fashion because of its partisan makeup, then we have no choice but to pack the Supreme Court to achieve balance, to bring balance to the force. Just like Anakin Skywalker did when he killed all those kids.
That's right.
So that...
Hey, who's being macabre now?
Yeah, well, sorry. George Lucas. So that's what's happening right now with court packing. Will it succeed? I don't think it will. I don't think the Democrats have the votes to do it in the Senate, and I think if they try to do it and fail, it will be politically disastrous for them come 2022.
One could even say it would be a kick in the head.
Very good, Jonathan. Thank you all so much for listening to Right to Life Radio. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.